Those eyes.
Hey, welcome back to Inside the Huddle. Joining us, Jaime Miettinen of Sports Law Blonde on Twitter, and your famous level keeps on going up. You just did a speech at DePaul University last week.
Yeah, on Tuesday, I was able to speak with students of DePaul and the newly rebranded UIC John Marshall.
Okay, yeah, okay. And this was a conference from women in sports, right? Like sports professionals, just kind of talking about legal issues coming up in today's world.
It was actually more so we were kind of giving our stories and kind of we explained what we did. It was me and 3 other women, one who particularly focuses in music, so the entertainment side, and then 2 other women, one of which is actually co-counsel with Jeffrey Kessler for the U.S. Women's National Team lawsuit.
Oh, wow, okay.
So it was really cool to meet her. But we just kind of talked about what we did to prepare through law school, what we did like during that time, and kind of how we acted, and even like immediately thereafter, just to kind of prep and steps we took and important decisions that we weighed to kind of get to where we are today.
Okay. Well, congratulations. That is really cool. And I saw you tweeted that out and thought, like, man, like it seems like you're getting asked to do something like this now every month.
Kind of, yeah. Next month I'm going to Cooley, so I'm going to be going up to Lansing.
Okay. Well, don't lie. It tends when people step foot in that city, they just start lying about all kinds of things here. So
nice drop.
So let me ask you a question, because now we have a video of Mark Dantonio at his deposition saying, Curtis Blackwell never attended a meeting with me, and now we have a photo of him in a recruit's house. So what is the cost of lying in a deposition?
So, perjury, which I know y'all use the legal term for it earlier, it is punishable, but in order to be prosecuted, somebody would have to choose to prosecute about it, and it also needs to be a lie under oath, a material lie under oath, and not just a lie, but something that they knowingly said to be false at the time that they said it.
Okay, but this appears like he is knowingly saying this. He was knowingly.
So there's exactly why Mark Dantonio's lawyer said he didn't know. He forgot and didn't remember.
Right.
Couldn't recall it.
Because then he's not knowingly lying. He's just forgetting that he was there.
Correct.
That is such a slimy thing, man.
That's I don't know. Okay, so.
But then at the same time, the lawyer has to. It's our job to zealously educate.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's what he's paid handsomely to do. I get it.
Let me ask you this question, because I also asked this. If you're driving in, when you're driving, if you listen to it, like, would Mark Dantonio, would the attorney advise Mark Dantonio in a situation like this? Like, look, like you're either denying that a violation occurred, or you're admitting a violation occurred. If you're admitting a violation occurred, well, then they can immediately go after you. If you say that it didn't, then they've got to jump through a lot of hoops to get to a point of actually pressing violations. So would an attorney suggest to his client, lie about this?
No. Because as an attorney, all you gotta
should never do that, at least.
Yes. Ethically, an attorney would not do that, because the attorney would have to put together a defense that highlights that the other side has to prove to a certain extent their elements. And so trying to say, I did not, my client did not do this, or, he did do this, you want to try and put the burden on the other side to prove everything that happened for your client. That is alleged that your client did.
Let me ask you this. How much hot water is Mark Dantonio in right now?
I'd say it's pretty high up.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mm. Yeah. And if he lied about this, if you're Curtis Blackwell's attorney, are you circling? Like, you've got this now. Like, you've got him lying under oath. You've got physical evidence of it. Do you just essentially say he's lying about everything?
I think it's the best case scenario probably from their perspective, because it puts into question a system that people were kind of ready to say, okay, you've done your self-checks and everything. That was starting to regain its reputation again a bit. And now you're kind of putting it all into question again. And so for Blackwell, this is definitely a step in the right direction for him.
All right.
I have a quick question about that, just because, like, what Blackwell is suing for really has nothing to do with what Dantonio lied about.
Yeah.
But that, like, how does that? I mean, that's kind of what Mike was just asking. But like, how?
And that's why I think it like, if we're talking about like lying under oath, like perjury, it wouldn't necessarily be a material thing unless like you phrase it in a way to saying, oh, this is just one little lie. Like, is there something like larger at stake? Mm-hmm. Kind of, I think it was you were mentioning that earlier.
Yeah, I mean, that was.
I thought you phrased it really well.
It's just like, yeah, my chick said, don't give me credit. Come on, Mike. You know what I bring to the table here every day.
I'm still waiting.
No, so it's just one of those things where, like, I don't know how the legal system works in that regard, but it beats really the credibility.
Yeah,
it destroys his credibility. Absolutely.
So what they could do is like eliminate his whole testimony and stuff too from the record.
Wow.
There you go.
Wow. So some hot water, boiling hot water for Mark Dantonio. We're talking to Jaime Miettinen. You can find her on Twitter at SportsLawBlind. You can track her down at MiettinenLawPLLC.com. Sports business attorney, also represents entrepreneurs, represents artists, represents individuals in music, anything. If you're a professional and you want someone taking care of your legal needs and making sure your contract looks, every I is dotted, every T is crossed, and yet you don't lie under oath, you need someone like Jaime Miettinen on your side. And her greatest passion, as you have heard over the last 2 years, is advocating for student athletes, especially college and the high school ranks. And so, we've had, since you've last been on, we've had, a couple different things that have come up, and I'm like, oh, Jaime, I'm going to talk to you about this. And then, last week you were under the weather, and so I'm like, okay, well, we'll stick with it. And then just 2 days ago, the statement from the ACC, they got together for their winter meetings, February 12th to 14th. The ACC discussed the transfer environment and unanimously concluded that as a matter of principle, we support a one-time transfer opportunity for all student athletes, regardless of sport. As a conference, we look forward to continuing the discussion nationally. So a couple of weeks ago, CBS Sports first broke the story that Ward Manuel was one of the lead architects for the Big Ten back in the fall of introducing legislation that they wanted the NCAA to consider that said, you transfer, the first time you transfer, you get that immediate eligibility. It didn't really spend a lot of time talking about second and third transfers, but essentially said, like, the first time you get immediate eligibility, after that, you're not going to get immediate eligibility. And what I told you, Jamie, I applaud the Big Ten for introducing it, and essentially this is kind of like the Jim Harbaugh rule. But what I didn't like is that they, even in the article, wrote that they did it quietly. They kind of like try to sneak it in there without telling anybody. I thought you should go out there. If this is something that matters to you, you should be shouting it from the rooftops. Well, here's the ACC now, a couple of months later, that the ACC, after this article comes out, they get together for their meetings and they release a statement saying, we think that you should do this. So now you have 2 out of the 5 Power 5 conferences that, admittedly, the Big Ten didn't come up publicly, but now they're out there publicly saying that we should have a one-time transfer rule. The NCAA, from the CBS article a couple weeks ago, said, well, they're going to shelve this discussion until, after the 2019-20 calendar year, which is essentially when baseball would end. The sports season would end. But now that you've got 2 out of the 5, and I would imagine that Pac-12, Big 12, more likely than the SEC, are going to follow suit here. Does this happen a little bit sooner than we were expecting? Does it jump to the forefront? Does the NCAA say, well, now that 2 out of the 5 are talking about it, we got to bring this into conversation right now? Mm-hmm.
You kind of set it on a tee perfectly for me, because yesterday, remember that NCAA transfer working group that formed like back in 2018? Mm-hmm. Well, they said that they are trying to put together a set of rules to be in place for the 2020-2021 season, and they want to put it up for the vote that goes on in April.
Wow. Okay.
So they are going to try and do this. Actually, the guy leading this, fun fact, is from the MAC, and so it's kind of cool that somebody, locally in this kind of Midwesty area is recognizing, okay, like we can't ignore this anymore. We have to treat all the students fairly with this, with respect to this. And I applaud, the Big Ten for proposing it, even though it was, a little on the down low. At least it started something. And then the ACC, I am a fan of, if you're going to advocate for student athlete rights, you got to advocate, you got to use your voice like that,
Absolutely.
And so this is cool. If this change happens, it will take away some of my work, which I will gladly welcome, because it's exactly what type of thing me and a handful of other attorneys and other advocates have been trying to fight for. But my next question would be then, okay, so, well, I guess I have two questions. The first would be, would all these conferences who are in favor of this being a nationwide rule with the NCAA, would they be in favor of not placing any further restrictions within their intra-conference transfers?
Yeah.
Because currently, like right now, the Big Ten is one of them. Even if you're not one of the revenue sports, one of those 5 listed, you have to still go through a waiver process if you want immediate eligibility. Every case I've worked on has been granted, but I've heard of a lot of cases that haven't been, and they're not the only conference like that. So if the Big Ten is proposing this rule, I hope that they would, choose to acknowledge it for everybody, intra-conference or inter-conference.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think that's probably going to be a big point. But you can't say, hey, we're going to have essentially, nationwide. We want to do what's best for the student athlete. But if you want to leave Michigan and go to Rutgers, you still have to get a waiver from us. And if you look at a couple of situations that have happened in Michigan, Oliver Martin was from Iowa, went back to Iowa, and Drew Singleton from New Jersey went back to New Jersey and is at Rutgers now. And both of those players were granted immediate eligibility. And I don't know Michigan must have obviously, waived off on the waiver.
Doing like a letter of,
You think look, in a lot of these times, these guys are still capable of playing at a Big Ten level, and it just makes sense for them to be closer to home. So I would hope that would be the case. I tell you what, Jamie, if you do lose business from this, chances are you're going to start gaining business from athletes needing representation for name, image, and likeness.
And it would be in such a more positive working
Absolutely.
light too, and because this is like all negative connotation, like we're fighting, and then being able to do work for them, but in a more enlightening kind of way, like that is a positive thing for them right from the start. That would be that's the goal.
So
Just
you said
with them for
you said that they could be putting this in front of the NCAA in April to propose it for the 2020-2021 sports year.
Yep, they'll be going to a vote. That's their goal anyway.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
And then my second question about this would be, are they doing this now to kind of use it as a pawn in this whole name, image, and likeness stuff? Like, we're going to give you this, but we're not going to fully give you the name, image, and likeness and stuff. So are they going to try and, because when you think about it, similar things happen with all the pro leagues when they're negotiating their collective bargaining agreements. Is this something that they're going to be using? Oh, we're giving them this, so we don't necessarily have to give them all of this or something too.
I wondered about that myself. I wondered about it. Here's a little bit of a carrot, so we don't want you to eat everything off the plate.
I'd like to think the best of things, but you never really
Mark
know.
Emmert makes it really hard to think the best of things.
Just like in his discussion at the NCAA meeting a few weeks ago or a month ago or whatever it was at this point. I don't even know what day of the week it is. But just when I thought maybe they'll be open, closing remarks, nope. Complete right back where we started.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to talk about that soon, too. Jaime Miettinen at Sports Law Blonde on Twitter, sportslawblondes.com. She is a lawyer, and she is advocating for student athletes, and we hope that they get this next opportunity
Yes.
come April. That would be awesome. I know Tom Mars, who's probably the most famous sports business attorney out there right now. He's the one that represented Shea Patterson. I believe that he represented Justin Fields, and he said the same thing too. I mean, he's like, this would be bad for my business, but it's something that
it's in the best interest for the college athletes, like hands down. And thank goodness that they're openly starting to recognize it.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see if someone else comes out publicly. I think if you're the SEC and you're against this, you just have to shut your mouth. You just have to. Maybe you vote on it. You vote against it when it comes to, but you don't come out publicly and say we think this would be bad or we don't like this and the whole thing. I do think that the SEC would be a interesting petri dish when this unfolds.
Yeah.
But I really like the idea, and I think it's going to be great for student athletes. I think it's going to be great especially for student athletes in the Mid-American Conference that want to go into their senior year, take a step up, and as we said, it's almost like the relegation process. Guys that can't cut it in the Big Ten take a step down. Guys that are performing in the Mid-American Conference or the Sun Belt or the Big West all take a step up. So,
like you talk about how right now we're kind of missing that competitive balance. This, letting the market do its thing in that respect. Theory says that it should, pan out better for the non-Power 5 and for the Power 5. I was reading an article that referred to like the Power 2 plus Clemson. Those other few conferences now might have a bigger pool to choose from now.
Very well said. All right, when we come back, we'll transition a little bit, talk some Michigan basketball. Chris Young's coming up at 11:30. We've also got Mel Pearson at 12 o'clock and Chris Fetter at 12:30. Action-packed show here today. This is Inside the Huddle on Sports Talk 1050, WTK Ticket.